The alarm cut through the cargo platform before I even understood what it meant. One moment, I was checking a shipment manifest, and the next, the whole deck tilted with the sound of engines that did not belong to any trader I knew. I dropped the pad in my hand and looked up just in time to see 3 unmarked ships lock onto the platform's outer rings. People screamed and scattered in every direction. Metal crates toppled. A woman near the loading arm grabbed her child and ran for the nearest exit, but there were too many people and only a few doors. I had flown cargo through rough space before, dealt with pirates who wanted nothing more than a quick payout, but this felt different. This felt planned. Then I saw her. A small alien girl, maybe 6 years old by human years, standing frozen in the middle of the walkway. Her guardians were nowhere in sight, lost somewhere in the crowd that had already surged past her without stopping. She had long, thin limbs and wide, dark eyes, and she was looking straight at the armed men stepping off the nearest ship, as if she could not understand why the world had suddenly turned against her. I did not think. I ran. I reached her half a second before the first raider raised his weapon in her direction, and I pulled her behind me without breaking stride. She grabbed onto the back of my jacket with both hands, so tight I could feel her shaking through the fabric. "Stay behind me," I said, even though I doubted she understood a word of it. "Just stay close." The raiders were fast, and they were not here for cargo. I understood that the moment one of them shouted an order in a language I did not recognize, pointing directly at the girl. This was a snatch operation. She was the target. I grabbed a length of loading chain from a nearby crate, more out of instinct than any real plan, and turned to put my body fully between her and the men closing in. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the noise of the platform. The first one reached me fast. I swung the chain and caught his arm before his blade reached me, and he stumbled back with a curse. But there were more behind him, and I realized quickly that this was not a fight I could win. It was a fight I could only survive long enough to matter. The first blade caught my shoulder. The pain was sharp and sudden, a jolt that made my vision flash white for half a second. But I did not go down. I could not go down. Behind me, the girl pressed herself against my back, and every part of my body understood, without needing to be told, that if I fell, she would not have anywhere left to run. I do not remember every strike after that. I remember the sound more than the pain, the scrape of metal, the shouting, the girl's voice crying out something over and over, a word I did not know yet. I remember pushing forward instead of back, because pushing forward kept them focused on me instead of her. I remember counting somewhere in the back of my mind, though I could not tell you now what number I reached before the counting stopped meaning anything. At some point, the platform's emergency turrets came online, late, but not too late, and the raiders broke formation. I heard their ships pulling away, engines screaming as they abandoned whatever plan they had walked in with. I want to say I felt relief, but by then, the pain had become something bigger than relief could reach. My legs no longer felt like they belonged to me. I turned around to check on the girl, because that was the only thing my mind could still hold on to. She was there, untouched, tears streaking down her face, both hands still fisted in the back of my jacket. "You're safe," I told her. "You're safe now." Then the platform tilted sideways. Or maybe it was me that tilted, and the last thing I remember is making sure I fell away from her, so that even unconscious, I would not land on top of her and frighten her further. After that, there was nothing. No dreams. No sense of time passing. Just a long, quiet dark that asked nothing of me at all. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was an itch, deep and strange, in places that did not feel like they should still be attached to me. I opened my eyes to a ceiling that glowed pale blue, a color I had never seen on any ship I had worked before. A machine somewhere nearby ticked out a steady rhythm, matching my own heartbeat, and the air smelled faintly of something clean and sharp, like crushed mint mixed with metal. I turned my head, and that was when I saw them. 6 figures stood at the foot of the bed in a loose half-circle, silent, still, watching me the way soldiers watch a door they expect trouble to walk through. They were tall, easily 2 heads taller than me, with dark-plated shoulders that caught the light like polished stone. I recognized the markings on their armor from cargo runs through this region. These were Vask warriors, and not ordinary ones. These were the elite. My hand tightened on the edge of the blanket, before my brain caught up with the fact that if they had wanted me gone, I would already be gone. "You are awake," the nearest one said. His voice came out low, and a small device at his collar translated his words a half-second behind his mouth. "Good. The healers said you might sleep through another full cycle." I tried to sit up, and pain shot through my chest, my shoulder, and my side all at once, sharp enough to steal the breath from my lungs. It was only then that pieces of memory started falling back into place, one after another: the platform, the running, the girl, the chain in my hand. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice rough and barely above a whisper. "The little girl. Is she safe?" The warrior tilted his head slightly, a gesture I had not yet learned to read. "She is unharmed. She has asked about you 11 times since you were brought aboard this ship." Something in my chest loosened at that, even through the pain. "Good," I said. "That's good." "You do not understand what you have done," he said. "Among my people, no one stands between a blade and a stranger's child without years of oath and training behind them. You had no oath. You had no training for this, and yet you did not fall until you were certain she was safe." "There wasn't anyone else close enough," I said. "She was right there. I didn't really think about it beyond that." A low sound passed between the warriors, something between a laugh and a breath held too long, like they did not quite know what to do with an answer that simple. "My name is Draeth," the lead warrior said. "I command the guard assigned to the ambassador's family. The child you protected is his daughter. Her name is Vessa." "Daniel," I said. "Daniel Hart. I fly cargo through this region, or I did, before this." "You will fly again," Draeth said. "Your wounds were severe, but the healers say you will recover fully in time." I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. For a moment, the room was quiet, except for the soft chime of the machine beside me. "There is something else you should know," Draeth said, and his tone shifted, becoming more careful. "The raiders who attacked the platform were not simple thieves. They were hired to take Vessa specifically. Ambassador Seska has powerful enemies, and this was not their first attempt, only the first that came close to success." That settled heavily in my chest. So they might try again. "They will try again," Draeth said, "which is why the ambassador wishes to speak with you himself, once you are strong enough to receive him." I did not have to wait long. Later that same day, or what passed for a day aboard a ship with no windows, the door to my room slid open, and a tall figure entered wearing robes marked with symbols I did not recognize but understood instinctively to mean something important. Behind him walked Vessa, half hidden behind his leg, peeking out at me with wide eyes. "Daniel Hart," the ambassador said, his voice deep and measured. "I am Seska. You saved my daughter's life at great cost to your own body. I do not take that lightly." "I just did what made sense at the time," I said, echoing what I had already told Draeth, because it was still the only honest answer I had. Vessa slipped out from behind her father and walked closer to the bed, stopping just short of touching me, as if she were not sure it was allowed. "You stayed," she said quietly, in careful, accented words. "Everyone else ran. You stayed." "I wasn't going to leave you there," I said, and meant it completely. Seska watched this exchange with an expression I could not fully read, something between gratitude and quiet calculation. "I would like to offer you a place among my personal guard," he said, "not as a soldier in the traditional sense, but as someone Vessa trusts, someone who has already proven, in the worst possible circumstances, that he will not abandon his post." I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, an alarm began to sound through the ship, sharp and urgent, cutting off whatever I was about to say. Draeth's posture changed instantly, shifting from calm to alert in the space of a single breath. "Unregistered ships approaching," he said, listening to something through his earpiece that the rest of us could not hear. "Weapons active." "They found us," Seska said, and for the first time since he had walked in, his calm cracked, just slightly, around the edges. Draeth turned to two of the warriors standing near the door. "Take the ambassador and his daughter to the escape pod bay. Move now." Vessa grabbed my hand before anyone could stop her, small fingers wrapping around mine with surprising strength. "Come with us," she said. I looked at Draeth, at the wound still healing under the bandages across my chest, and at the fear plain on her face, and I understood. without needing to think it through, that I was not going to let go of her hand. "I'm coming," I said, and forced myself upright despite the protest from every part of my body. The corridor outside my room was chaos, warriors moving in tight formation, lights flickering, as the ship's systems reallocated power toward its defenses. Dreyeth led the group, cutting a path through the narrow halls while 2 guards flanked Seska and Vesa, and I stayed close behind, my legs unsteady but holding. An explosion rocked the ship somewhere far below us, throwing everyone off balance for a moment. Vesa stumbled, and I caught her before she hit the floor, ignoring the sharp pull of pain across my side as I steadied her. "Almost there!" Dreyeth called back over the noise. "The pod bay is just ahead." We rounded the final corner and found it blocked. A section of the ceiling had collapsed during the explosion, sealing off the corridor with a wall of twisted metal and debris. Dreyeth stopped hard, and behind him, the rest of the group bunched together, trapped. "There is another route," one of the warriors said, "through the lower maintenance corridor, but it will take time we may not have." Dreyeth looked at me, and for a moment, I understood exactly what he was thinking, because I was thinking the same thing. Someone needed to hold this position, while the others found another way out, and every warrior in that hallway was needed to protect Seska and Vesa on the move. "I'll stay," I said, before he could ask. "Buy you time." "You are still healing," Dreyeth said. "You should not be the one to remain." "I'm already standing," I said. "Let me use it for something." Vesa's hand tightened around mine, and I crouched down slightly so I was closer to her height, even though the movement pulled painfully at my ribs. "I need you to go with Dreyeth now," I told her. "Just like before. I'll catch up." "You promise," she said, her voice small but steady, like she had already decided to believe me before I even answered. "I promise," I said, and meant it as much as I had ever meant anything. Dreyeth hesitated only a moment longer before nodding sharply and turning to lead the group toward the lower corridor, Vesa glancing back at me once before they disappeared around the bend. I turned to face the debris blocking the main corridor, listening to the sound of boots approaching from the far end, boarding troops moving fast through the smoke and flickering lights. I had no chain this time, no weapon at all, only the loading tool one of the warriors had left behind near the collapsed section, a heavy metal bar meant for clearing wreckage. It would have to be enough. The first boarding trooper rounded the corner and stopped short at the sight of me standing alone in front of the blocked path, bandages visible beneath my torn shirt, clearly still recovering from injuries and yet refusing to move. "Out of the way," he said through a translator device, his weapon raised. "Not going to happen," I answered. What followed was not a fight I was built to win, but it was one I understood completely. Every second I remained standing was a second Vesa had to reach safety. Every second the boarding troopers spent trying to get past me was a second Dreyeth and Seska did not have to spend running from a fight they could not yet see. I do not remember exactly how long I held that corridor. Long enough that my legs eventually stopped answering properly. Long enough that the metal bar in my hands felt heavier with each swing. But I remember the moment the ship's alarm changed tone, shifting from an attack warning to an all clear, and I remember the boarding troopers suddenly breaking off and retreating back the way they came, called away by something happening elsewhere on their own ships. I did not fully understand what had happened until later, when Dreyeth explained that reinforcements loyal to the ambassador had arrived just in time, forcing the attacking ships to withdraw before they could complete their assault. By the time he found me again, slumped against the collapsed section of corridor but still upright, the danger had already passed. "You held them," he said, kneeling beside me, checking the fresh injuries with quick, practiced hands. "Long enough." "Vesa," I managed to ask, "is she safe?" "She never left the corridor," Dreyeth admitted, a note of something like reluctant respect in his voice. "She refused to enter the escape pod without you. We were forced to wait until the reinforcements arrived." I let out a tired laugh, though it hurt to do so. "Stubborn kid. She takes after the one who taught her that staying matters more than running," Dreyeth said. They carried me back to the same medical room where I had first woken up, and this time, when I opened my eyes again after the healers finished their work, it was Vesa's face I saw first, close to the bed, watching me with the same wide eyes from the platform, except now there was no fear in them at all. "You kept your promise," she said, I told you I would, I said. Seska stood behind her, and Draeth beside him, along with the same 6 warriors who had first stood watch over me, though this time their posture was different, less guarded, more like people standing beside someone they had decided to trust completely. The offer I made you still stands, Seska said. More than that. Now, you have proven twice, in the space of a single cycle, that you do not know how to walk away from what matters to you. I thought about my old cargo runs, the routine deliveries, the quiet, unremarkable life I had been living before the alarm first sounded on that platform. None of it called to me the way this room did, with a small girl still gripping my hand, and a group of warriors watching me like I had become something they had not expected to find in a stranger. I think I'd like to stay, I said. Vesa smiled, the first full smile I had seen from her since this had all begun, and for the first time since the platform, since the corridor, since everything that had happened in between, the pain in my body felt like it belonged to something worth carrying. Draeth stepped forward and placed a hand briefly over his chest, a gesture I would later learn was reserved only for those the warriors considered one of their own. Then welcome, he said, to the guard. I looked around the room, at the ambassador, at the warriors, at the small girl who had refused to leave a corridor without me, and understood, clearly and completely, that whatever came next, I would not be facing it alone.